and I hope it's a good day for you. Sound check. All right, it's working good. Cool. So what's up, everybody? This is Jay Baldell, and here we are on Tuesday, ready for some more Transcendental Magic study, more class, more fun. You know the drill. So welcome to my channel. If you're new and you end up enjoying this content, then please hit a like. And also hit that notification bell if you'd like more content. We got lots of fun studies of spooky texts and top secret information. Okay, looks like everything is set up pretty good. So let's just get right into it. Pull a tarot card, see what we've got, what our message is for the day, as we are preparing to crack into this 6th chapter now of both the Doctrine and Ritual of Éliphas Lévi's Transcendental Magic. It'll be a good one, this one, talking about the mysteries of Tiferet. Kinda, sorta. That's all I'm going to say about it for now. And let's see if you, as a student of this information and as a practitioner, are able to see, based on what Lévi has to say, the correspondence to Tiferet on the Tree of Life, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. Okay, cut the deck. That's our card. Oh, that's a trump card for sure. Ha! Ha! Got it that time. Nice. I've been wrong. Man, I was having a real rough streak there with the whole clairvoyant tarot. But this time, I got it right. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now in the world around us. Aries, the Emperor. It is Aries season, all right. It definitely is. You can feel it. The fieriness. But also that leadership ability, you know, that's something that Aries also has going for itself, similar as kind of Leo. It's kind of wanting to lead the way a little bit. So we see that here with the Emperor, the King. You also see a hidden symbol of sulfur in there with his legs crossed, and then I want to see the ends of his throne, like kind of looks like the end of the armrests up to his crown, makes the triangle, boom, and then the cross there. Well, I know, at least for me personally right now, what this card is talking about is a lot of that alchemy of, because especially taking into consideration that this card is Zodi, so because it's from Crowley's deck, so there's that switch there, and the understanding of that switch that this is the star card in disguise, or incarnated in Asaya / Malkuth, in the planet Earth, in the material realm. And so he's living out his true will to a sense, because he's recognized the fact that his particular, and also going into our Buddhist studies a bit, his particular Dharma, to accurately walk that path of Dharma and live in alignment with his true will, well, that he's got a kingdom to rule. And we all kind of have a kingdom to rule, right? We see even here, so see, this is an interesting one too, because you see the lamb right here, which is a pretty gentle creature, right, oftentimes, but it's also got this flag, right, like it's waving the white flag, the flag of surrender. So it's because I'm sure some people, yeah, they search out and they seek out power. They say, oh yeah, everyone will bow before me, but it's often said how the best ruler is the one who doesn't even want to do it in the first place, but they surrender to the fact that, yep, that's their dharma. Same with Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield, right? Krishna telling him, hey, there is no one at all better for this job than you. And you wanting to walk away from it and even be a coward and a sinner, we could say by not doing so, then you are you're committing a real atrocity. Where instead you could just surrender to this is what time it is. This is what you've got to do, Right now, this is the kingdom you've got to rule, and your kingdom is about to erupt into warfare. But maybe that's not so much what's going on. I mean, we saw that a little bit in our tarot reading yesterday, but not terrible. I wouldn't say that that one was so horrible as much as it was just more about maybe we're feeling a little sluggish lately, as I was saying, and so just maybe dusting yourself off a bit, rinsing yourself off, hop in that shower, quit swimming around in that stormy sea, and remind yourself that I got a job to do, whatever your job might be. It doesn't matter. Just do your best to surrender to, at least for now, that's what it is. But also, that's where we do have magic up our sleeve, you know? And we see even here, he's got the orb in his hand, he's got the wand in his hand, so he's a magician as well as an emperor. And so we can always improve our circumstances, but while we're in the circumstances we're in, like I said with that reading yesterday as well, is that the more you fight it, like they say, what you resist persists, right? So if you're every single day headed to work thinking to yourself how much you hate your life, you hate your job, all of that, it's probably not going to improve. Or if you end up finding another job, you're just going to probably carry that over into your next job. So using certain magical techniques, certain skills you've picked up along the way, you've applied to your practice to not only help you find that element of maturity, which kind of goes hand in hand with the surrender that we see in this card here, but also the ability to improve, but based on those things, to while you're there, not let it be such a damper on your life, but know that you've got the skills, you've got the tools to improve that. Just like him ruling this kingdom, even if his kingdom starts to get a little bit yucky, a little bit crap, well, a good emperor is going to be able to correct that. All right, then. That's the message for today. And then this path, since that switch happens, then this path becomes Netzach to Yesod. So tomorrow we'll be on the Netzach, but for right now. But if you stick to the other switch, then it is the path of Tiferet to Hokmah. So I guess depending on where you place that on the tree of life, if you go along with that switch or not, then we might see that reflected in what we learned today as well. Okay, everyone. Well, welcome to class. Let's get it going. All right. So chapter 6 of the Doctrine, and we see here a vow, right? That's a vow. Yod, He, vow, but it's got an F. So yeah, some of that, well, I think a vow can be an F actually. So that one's a little more accurate than some of these other ones we've seen Lévi come up with. And there's a footnote right on that saying 6 is the number of the days of the week. In what calendar, man? And the characteristic number of time, as 7 is figurative of eternity. It represents equilibrium in the finite, 3 equilibrated by 3. Otherwise, the soul striving with matter, from Le Mystère de la Kabbalah and from La Clef de Grand Mystery, says that the centenary is the number of initiation by trial, and the hieroglyph of the science of good and evil, according to Lévi's posthumous work, The Magical Ritual of the Sanctum Regnum. The hexagram is the monogram of Hermetic truth. All right. So, yep, chapter 6, titled Magical Equilibrium, also Tiferet Uncus. Supreme intelligence is necessarily reasonable. God in philosophy may be only a hypothesis, but he is a hypothesis imposed by good sense on human reason. To personify the absolute reason is to determine the divine ideal. Necessity, liberty, and reason, these are the great and supreme triangle of the Kabbalists who name reason Kether, necessity Hokmah, and liberty Binah in their first or divine triad. Fatality, will, and power, such is the magical triad, which corresponds in things human to the divine triad. Fatality is the inevitable sequence of events and causes in a determined order. Will is the directing faculty of intelligent forces for the conciliation of the liberty of persons with the necessity of things. Power is the wise application of will, which enlists fatality itself in the accomplishment of the desires of the sage. When Moses smote the rock, he did not create the spring of water. He revealed it to the people, because occult science had made it known to him by means of the divining rod. It is in like manner with all miracles of magic, a law exists, which is ignored by the vulgar and made use of by the initiate. Occult laws are often opposed diametrically to common ideas. For the example, the crowd believes in the sympathy of things which are alike and in the hostility of things contrary. But it is the opposite which is the true law. It used to be affirmed that nature abhors the void, but it should be said that nature desires it. Were the void not, in physics, the most irrational of fictions? In all things, the vulgar mind habitually takes shadow for reality, turns its back upon light, and is reflected in the obscurity which it projects itself. The forces of nature are at the disposal of one who knows how to resist them. Are you master sufficiently of yourself to be never intoxicated? Then will you direct the terrible and fatal power of intoxication? If you would make others drunk, possess them with the desire of drink, but do not partake of it yourself. That man will dispose of the love of others, who is master of his own. If you would possess, do not give. The world is magnetized by the light of the sun, and we are magnetized by the astral light of the world. That which operates in the body of the planet repeats itself in us. Within us, there are three analogical and hierarchic worlds, as in all nature. Man is the microcosm or little world, and according to the doctrine of analogies, whatsoever is in the great world is reproduced in the small. Hence, we have three centers of fluidic attraction and projection: the brain, the heart, or epigastric region, and the genital organ. Each of these instruments is one and twofold. In other words, we find the suggestion of the triad therein. Each attracts on one side and repels on the other. It is by means of such apparatus that we place ourselves in communication with the universal fluid supplied to us by the nervous system. These three centers are, moreover, the seat of a triple magnetic operation, as we shall explain elsewhere. When the magus has attained lucidity, whether through the mediation of a pythoness or by his own development, he communicates and directs at will the magnetic vibrations in the whole mass of the astral light, the currents of which he divines by means of the magic wand, which is a perfected divining rod. By the aid of these vibrations, he influences the nervous system of persons made subject to his action, accelerates or suspends the currents of life, soothes or tortures, heals or hurts, in fine, slays or brings to life. Here, however, we pause in presence of the smile of incredulity. Let us permit it to enjoy the easy triumph of denying what it does not know. And there's a footnote saying, intimations of another order are conveyed in La Science des Esprits, to get possession of blind forces and so direct them that they become the lever of intelligence, such as the great secret of magic, to invoke blindest passions, which are also illimitable in their scope, and bring them into slavish subjection, is to create omnipotence. We shall demonstrate later on that death is preceded always by a lethargic sleep, and hence takes place gradually. That resurrection is possible in certain cases, that lethargy is a real but uncompleted death, and that the final paroxysm is in many cases subsequent to inhumation. This, however, is not the subject of the present chapter. We affirm now that a lucid will can act upon the mass of the astral light, and in concurrence with other wills which it absorbs and draws along, can determine great and irresistible currents. We say also that the astral light condenses or rarefies in proportion as currents accumulate, more or less, at certain centers. When it is deficient in the energy required for the support of life, diseases accompanied by sudden decomposition follow, of a kind which baffle physicians. There is no other cause, for example, in the case of cholera morbus, and the swarms of animalculae observed or supposed by some specialists may be the effect rather than the cause. Cholera should be treated, therefore, by insufflation. Did not the operator thereby run the chance of an exchange with the patient which would be very formidable for himself? Every intelligent effort of will is a projection of the human fluid or light, and here it is needful to distinguish the human from the astral light, and animal from universal magnetism. In making use of the word fluid, we employ an accepted expression and seek to be understood in this manner, but we are far from deciding that the latent light is a fluid. Everything prompts us, on the contrary, to prefer the system of vibration in the explanation of this phenomenal subject. However it may be, the light in question, being the instrument of life, cleaves naturally to all living centers, attaches itself to the nucleus of planets, even as to the heart of man, and by the heart we understand magically the great sympathetic, identifying itself with the individual life of the being which it animates. And it is by this quality of sympathetic assimilation that it is distributed without confusion. Hence, it is terrestrial in its affinity with the sphere of the earth and human exclusivity in its affinity with men. And quite a good footnote on that. Oh, and I just realized too, it just occurred to me that Aries ruled by Mars and it's Tuesday. So that energy is abundant. All right, then. Footnote says, it is said otherwise that all prodigies are performed by means of a single agent, which the Hebrews term Od. Like Baron Reichenbach, we will call on our own part the astral light, following the school of Martin de Pasquale, which Monsieur de Merville dubs the devil, while the old alchemists denominated it Azo. It is that vital element which manifests in the phenomena of heat, light, electricity, and magnetism, which magnetizes all terrestrial globes and all living beings. It gives proof of the Kabbalistic doctrine concerning equilibrium and movement by the double polarity which attracts on the one side and repels on the other. On the one produces heat, and on the other cold, with their color correspondences of blue and greenish light and of yellow and reddish. This agent, according to its diverse modes of magnetization, renders us mutually attractive or repellent, subjects wills to one another, establishes or disturbs equilibrium in the animal economy by its transmutation and alternative emanations, receives and transmits the imprints of that imaginative force which is in man the image and likeness of the creative word, thus awakening presentiments and determining dreams. The science of miracles lies in the knowledge of this wonderful force, while the art of performing them is simply the art of magnetizing or illuminating beings according to the invariable laws of magnetism or the astral light. From La Clef de Grand Mystery. And it says, Lévi goes on to record his preference for the word light rather than that of magnetism because it is more traditional in occultism and expresses more fully the nature of the secret agent. He defines the latter as the fluid and potable gold of alchemical masters. He pretends also in his reverie that the French or, which means gold, comes from the Hebrew or, which signifies light. The universal agent is defined otherwise as vital force subordinated to intelligence. If abandoned to itself, it devours whatsoever it produces, like Moloch, and as such, it is the infernal serpent of ancient mythos. But if wisdom, mother of the Elohim, sets a foot upon its head, the flames which it breathes forth are extinguished, and wisdom, with open hands, pours life-giving light upon the earth. All right. It is for this reason that electricity, caloric light, and magnetism produced by ordinary physical means not only do not originate, but tend rather to neutralize the effects of animal magnetism. The astral light, subordinated to a blind mechanism and proceeding from arbitrary automatic centers, is a dead light and works mathematically following given impulsions or fatal laws. The human light is fatal only to the ignorant. Performing chance experiments, in the seer, it is subjected to intelligence, submitted to imagination, and dependent on will. This light, continually projected by the will, constitutes the personal atmospheres of Swedenborg. The body absorbs what environs it and radiates perpetually by projecting its influences and invisible molecules. It is the same with the spirit, so that this phenomenon, by some mystics termed respiration, has really the influence, both physical and moral, which is assigned to it. It is undoubtedly contagious to breathe the same air as diseased persons, and to be within the circle of attraction and expansion which surrounds the wicked. When the magnetic atmosphere of two persons is so equilibrated that the attractive faculty of one draws the expansive faculty of the other, a tendency is produced which is termed sympathy. Then imagination, calling up to it all the rays or reflections analogous to that which it experiences, makes a poem of the desires which captivate will, and if the persons differ in sex, it occasions in them, or more commonly in the weaker of the two, a complete intoxication of the astral light, which is termed passion par excellence, or love. Love is one of the great instruments of magical power, but it is categorically forbidden to the magus, at least as an intoxication or passion. Woe to the Samson of the Kabbalah if he permit himself to be put asleep by Delilah. The Hercules of science who exchanges his royal scepter for the distaff of Omphale will soon experience the vengeance of Dejanira, and nothing will be left for him but the pyre of Mount Ada, in order to escape the devouring folds of the coat of Nessus. Sexual love is ever an illusion, for it is the result of an imaginary mirage. The astral light is the universal seducer, typified by the serpent of Genesis. And a note on that says, compare the first reference to Azot in chapter 1 and the annotation thereon. Éliphas Lévi does not mean, of course, that the so-called universal seducer is God in manifestation, or that the Jehovah of Kabbalism is a blind force, indifferent to good or evil, but this is how his loose imagery lends itself to interpretation. This subtle agent, ever active, ever vigorous, ever fruitful in alluring dreams and sensuous images, this force, which of itself is blind and subordinated to every will, whether for good or evil, this ever-renewing circulus of unbridled life which produces vertigo in the imprudent, this corporeal spirit, this fiery body, this impalpable omnipresent ether, this monstrous seduction of nature, how shall we define it comprehensively, and how characterize its action? To some extent, indifferent in itself, it lends itself to good as to evil. It transmits light and propagates darkness. It may be called equally Lucifer and Lucifuge. It is a serpent, but it is also an aureole. It is a fire, but it may belong equally to the torments of Infernus or the sacrifice of incense offered up to heaven. To dispose of it we must, like the predestined woman, set our foot upon its head. In the elementary world, water corresponds to the Kabbalistic woman and fire to the serpent. To subdue the serpent, that is, to govern the circle of the astral light, we must place ourselves outside its current. In other words, we must isolate ourselves. For this reason, Apollonius of Tyana wrapped himself completely in a mantle of fine wool, setting his feet thereon and drawing it over his head. Then he bent his back in semicircular fashion and closed his eyes after performing certain rites, probably magnetic passes and sacramental words designed to fix imagination and determine the action of will. The woolen mantle is of great use in magic and was the common conveyance of sorcerers on their way to the Sabbath, which proves that the sorcerers did not really go to the Sabbath, but the Sabbath came to the sorcerers, when isolated in their mantle and brought before their translucid images and analogous to their magical preoccupations, combined with reflections of all kindred acts accomplished previously in the world. This torrent of universal life is represented also in religious doctrines by the expiatory fire of hell. It is the instrument of initiation, the monster to be overcome, the enemy to subdue. It is this which brings to our evocations and to the conjurations of goetic magic such swarms of larvae and phantoms. Therein are preserved all the fantastic and fortuitous assemblages of forms which people our nightmares with such abominable monstrosities. To be sucked down by this whirling stream is to fall into abysses of madness, more frightful than those of death. To expel the shades of this chaos and compel it to give perfect forms to our thoughts. This is to be a man of genius. It is to create. It is to be victorious over hell. The astral light directs the instincts of animals and offers battle to the intelligence of man, which it strives to pervert by the enticements of its reflections and the illusion of its images. It is a fatal and inevitable operation directed and made still more calamitous by elementary spirits and suffering souls whose restless wills seek out sympathies in our weakness and tempt us, but not so much to destroy us as to win friends for themselves. There you go. There you go, Goetia people. There you go. That book of consciences, which according to Christian doctrine shall be opened at the last day, is no other than the astral light, which preserves the impress of every logos, that is to say, of all actions and all forms. Our acts modify our magnetic respiration in such a way that a seer, meeting any person for the first time, can tell whether he is innocent or criminal, and what are his virtues or his crimes. This faculty, which belongs to divination, was called by the Christian mysteries of the early church the discernment of spirits. Wong time in, welcome in. Woof, woof, woof indeed. Yep, exactly. Barking. Those spirits get barking at you. They sure do. Those who abdicate the empire of reason and permit their wills to wander in pursuit of reflections in the astral light are subject to alternations of mania and melancholy, which have originated all the marvels of demoniacal possession. Though it is true at the same time that by means of these reflections, impure spirits can act upon such souls, make use of them as docile instruments, and even habitually torment their organism, wherein they enter and reside by obsession or embryonically. These Kabbalistic terms are explained in the Hebrew book of the Revolution of Souls, of which our 13th chapter will contain a succinct analysis. It is therefore extremely dangerous to make sport of the mysteries of magic. It is above all excessively rash to practice its rites from curiosity, by way of experiment and as if to exploit higher forces. Exploit. Who's been exploiting? Who's been out here talking about what can this spirit get me? What can this spirit do for me? What can the inquisitive, who, without being adepts, busy themselves with evocations or occult magnetism, are like children playing with fire in the neighborhood of a cask of gunpowder. Sooner or later, they will fall victims to some terrible explosion. To be isolated from the astral light, it is not enough to envelop oneself in a woolen fabric. We must also, and above all, impose absolute tranquility on mind and heart. We must have quitted the world of passions and be assured of perseverance in the spontaneous operations of an inflexible will. We must reiterate frequently the acts of this will, for as we shall see in the introduction to the ritual, it is by acts only that confidence is assured to the will. As the power and perpetuity of religions depend upon their rites and ceremonies. There are intoxicating substances which, by increasing nervous sensibility, exalt the power and consequently the allurements of astral representations. By the same means, but pursuing a contrary course, spirits may be terrified and disturbed. These substances, of themselves magnetic and magnetized further by operators, are what people term philters and enchanted potions. But we shall not enter here upon this dangerous aspect of the practice, which Cornelius Agrippa himself terms venomous magic. It is true that there are no longer pyres for sorcerers, but always, and more than ever, are there penalties dealt out to malefactors? Let us confine ourselves, therefore, to stating, as the occasion offers, the reality of such power. To direct the astral light, we must understand also its twofold vibration, as well as the balance of forces termed magical equilibrium expressed in the Kabbalah by the Senary. Considered in its first cause, this equilibrium is the will of God. It is liberty in man and mathematical equilibrium in matter. Equilibrium produces stability and duration. Liberty generates the immortality of man, and the will of God gives effect to the laws of eternal reason. And there's a footnote on that. Liberty generates the immortality of man. It says liberty, equality, fraternity, three words which seem so luminous and yet are full of obscurity. Three principles which in their combination produce a triple falsehood because they destroy one another. Liberty of necessity makes inequality manifest, while equality is a level which does not admit of liberty. For the level abases or suppresses all heads which rise above others. The pretension to equality sustained by liberty produces interminable strife of people between themselves and of pride and rebellion against that inexorable nature which makes fraternity impossible among men. The watchwords of the republic which is to come will be humanity, justice, solidarity. Such is the enigma of the modern Sphinx, which must be divined or we perish. From Le Porte de l'Avenir. And it also says, liberty is the full enjoyment of all those rights which do not connote a duty. It is by the fulfillment of duty that rights are acquired and preserved. Man has the right to do his duty because he is bound to preserve his rights. Self-devotion is only a sublimation of duty, and it is the most sublime of all rights. From paradoxes of the highest science. Paradoxes of the highest science. Okay. Equilibrium in ideas is reason and in force is power. Equilibrium is exact. Fulfill its law, and it is there. Violate it, however slightly, and it is destroyed. For this reason, nothing is useless or lost. Every utterance and every movement are for or against equilibrium, for or against truth, which is composed of for and against conciliated or at least equilibrated. We shall state in the introduction to the ritual how magical equilibrium should be produced and why it is necessary to the success of all operations. Well, good thing we already did some at VOM, huh? The yoga of equanimity, equilibrium, same type. Omnipotence is the most absolute liberty. Now, absolute liberty cannot exist apart from perfect equilibrium. Magical equilibrium is hence one of the first conditions of success in the operations of science and must be sought even in occult chemistry in learning to combine contraries without neutralizing them by one another. There you go. Combine contraries without neutralizing them by one another. Magical equilibrium explains the great and primeval mystery of the existence and relative necessity of evil. This relative necessity gives in black magic the measure of the power of demons or impure spirits, to whom virtues practiced upon earth are a source of increased rage and apparently of increased power. At the epochs when saints and angels work miracles openly, sorcerers and fiends in their turn operate marvels and prodigies. Rivalry often creates success. We lean upon that which resists. All right. All right, then. And boom. Back to the ritual. And why do you think a card, especially placed where it's at upon the tree, such as justice or adjustment, is such a crucial card and what is termed by Lon Milo Duquette as the fool's girlfriend? Why would that be the fool's girlfriend? Well, we've talked about it a little bit before, but this gives a lot more insight into that. Because if your life in general, even if you're not a magic spiritual type of person, Even if you're like, I don't know, somebody, just random, just everyday type of person who gets all caught up in whatever. Maybe they're like a big fan of, I don't know, true crime, and they get really sucked into politics and online propaganda, and they go to their job and they go home and have a beer and or a glass of wine or whatever, and well, they're not engaging with that thing as much, but even still, it can be easily said that their life is just as magical as this whole entire life in general. The life of a bunch of bees in a hive, the life of a deers hopping through the field, whatever. It's all magic to some extent, and it's all because it's this ultimate balancing act in the mind of God, right? Where there's that fool and then adjustment. So if it's like the point is for everybody to mature, but ultimately that's kind of the pivot point or the fulcrum of your maturity. Well then, hey, makes sense to me anyway, but maybe you got a different take. If so, I would love to hear it. All right, so chapter 6 of Ritual, the medium and the mediator. Two things, as we have shown, are necessary for the acquisition of magical power: the emancipation of will from servitude and its instruction in the art of domination. The sovereign will is represented in our symbols by the woman who crushes the serpent's head and by the radiant angel who restrains and constrains the dragon with lance and heel. In this place, let us affirm without evasion that the great magical agent, the double current of light, the living and astral fire of the earth, was represented by the serpent with the head of an ox, goat, or dog in ancient theogonies. It is the dual serpent of the Caduceus, the old serpent of Genesis, but it is also the brazen serpent of Moses twined about the Tau, that is, the generating lingam. It is, moreover, the goat of the Sabbath and the Baphomet of the Templars. It is the Hyli of the Gnostics. It is the double tail of the serpent which forms the legs of the solar cock of Abraxas. In fine, it is the devil of Monsieur Eudes. Let's see, it's probably Monsieur Eudes de Merville. And there's a note on that saying, as a subject of frequent reference in the writings of Éliphas Lévi, it may be noted that the Marquis J. Eudes de Merville created a considerable impression in Orthodox circles of France by a long series of works on pneumatology and the fluidic manifestation of the spirit. By the way, if anybody's really like speaks French or is just a lot better at French, then help me out on some of these pronunciations. Otherwise, I'm just going to do the best I can. He wrote at least 10 large volumes between 1853 and 1868. All psychical phenomena, including magnetic somnambulism and spiritism, were referred to satanic power. Apart from this point of view, his exhaustive historical collections represented considerable research and as such are still of value, but complete sets are not easy to obtain. All right, so in fine, it is the devil of Monsieur Merville, and it is really that blind force of which souls must overcome if they would be freed from the chains of earth. For unless their will can detach them from this fatal attraction, they will be absorbed in the current by the force which produced them, and will return to the central and eternal fire. The whole magical work consists therefore in our liberation from the folds of the ancient serpent, then in setting foot upon its head and leading it where we will. I will give thee all the kingdoms of the earth if thou wilt fall down and adore me, said this serpent in the evangelical mythos. The initiate should make answer, I will not kneel to thee, but thou shalt crouch at my feet. Nothing shalt thou give me, but I will make use of thee, and will take that which I need, for I am thy Lord and Master. A reply which, in a veiled manner, is contained in that of the Savior. We have said that there is no personal devil. It is a misdirected force, as the name indicates. And there's a footnote saying, should, however, a decision of some future council affirm that the devil exists personally, I should defer because of my principles. I have said that the word creates that which it affirms. Now, the church is depositary of the authority of the word. When it shall have affirmed not only the real but personal existence of the devil will exist personally. The Roman church will have created it. from Le Grand Arcane. And he says, see also Le Livre des Sages. The dogmatic devil is atheism personified. The philosophical devil is the exaggerated ideal of human liberty. The real or physical devil is the magnetism of evil. The vulgar devil is the crony of Polichinello. An odic or magnetic current formed by a chain of perverse wills constitutes this evil spirit, which the gospel calls legion. And this it is which precipitated the swine into the sea. Another allegory of the attraction exercised on beings of inferior instincts by blind forces that can be put in operation by error and evil will. This symbol may be compared with that of the comrades of Ulysses transformed into swine by the sorceress Circe. Remark what was done by Ulysses to preserve himself and deliver his associates. He refused the cup of enchantments and commanded her with the sword. Circe is nature, with all her delights and allurements. We must overcome her in order to enjoy. Such is the significance of the Homeric fable, for the poems of Homer, those true sacred books of ancient Hellas, contain all the mysteries of high Eastern initiation. The natural medium is therefore the ever active and ever seducing serpent of idle wills, which we must withstand by continual subjugation. Amorous, gluttonous, passionate, or idle magicians are impossible monstrosities. The magus thinks and wills. He loves nothing with desire. He rejects nothing in passion. The latter word signifies a passive state, and the magus is invariably active, invariably victorious. The attainment of this realization is the crux of the transcendent sciences. So when the magus accomplishes his own creation, the great work is fulfilled, at least as concerns cause and instrument. The great agent or natural mediator of human omnipotence cannot be overcome or directed save by an extranatural mediator, which is an emancipated will. Archimedes postulated a fulcrum outside the world in order to raise the world. The fulcrum of the magus is the intellectual cubic stone, the philosophical stone of Azo. That is, the doctrine of absolute reason and universal harmonies by the sympathy of contraries. One of our most fertile writers and one of those who are least fixed in their ideas, Monsieur Eugene Sue, has founded a vast romance epic upon an individuality whom he strives to render odious, who becomes interesting against the will of the novelist, so abundantly does he gift him with patience, audacity, intelligence, and genius. We are in the presence of a kind of Sixtus V, poor, temperate, passionless, holding the entire world entangled in the web of his skillful combinations. This man excites at will the passions of his enemies, destroys them by means of one another, invariably reaches the point of view, and this without noise, without ostentation, and without imposture. His object is to free the world of a society which the author of the book believes to be dangerous and malignant, and to attain it no cost is too great. Rodin is ill lodged, ill clothed, nourished like the refuse of humanity, but ever fixed upon his work. Consistently with his intention, the author depicts him as wretched, filthy, hideous, repulsive to the touch, and horrible to the sight. But supposing this very exterior is a means of disguising the enterprise and so of more surely attaining it, is it not proof positive of sublime courage? When Rodin becomes Pope, do you think that he will be ill-clothed and dirty? Hence, Monsieur Eugene Sue has missed his point. His object was to deride superstition and fanaticism, but that which he attacks is intelligence, strength, genius, the most signal human virtues. Were there many more Rodins among the Jesuits? Were there even one, I would not give much for success of the opposite party, in spite of the brilliant and maladroit special pleadings of its illustrious advocates. To will well, to will long, to will always, but never to lust after anything, such is the secret power, and this is the magical arcanum, which Tasso brings forward in the persons of two knights who come to deliver Rinaldo and to destroy the enchantments of Armida. They withstand equally the most alluring nymphs and most terrible wild beasts. They remain without desires and without fear, and hence they attain their end. Does it follow from this that a true magician inspires more fear than love? I do not deny it, and while recognizing abundantly how sweet are the attractions of life, while doing full justice to the gracious genius of, of Anacreon, and to all the youthful efflorescence of the poetry of love, I invite the estimable votaries of pleasure to regard the transcendental sciences merely as a matter of curiosity and never to approach the magical tripod. The great works of science are mortal to sense enjoyment. The man who has escaped from the chain of instincts will first of all realize his omnipotence by the obedience of animals. The history of Daniel in the lion's den is no fable, and more than once during the persecutions of infant Christianity, this phenomenon recurred in the presence of the whole Roman people. A man seldom has anything to fear from an animal of which he is not afraid. The bullets of Jules Gerard, the lion killer, are magical and intelligent. Only once did he run a real danger. He allowed a timid companion to accompany him, and looking upon this imprudent person as lost beforehand, he also was afraid, not for himself, but for his comrade. Many persons will say that it is difficult and even impossible to attain such resolution, that strength and volition and energy and character are natural gifts. I do not dispute it, but I would point out also that habit can reform nature, volition can be perfected by education, and as intimated otherwise, all magical, like all religious, ceremonial, has no other end but thus to test, exercise, and habituate the will by perseverance and by force. The more difficult and laborious the exercises, the greater their effect. Oh man, you oh man. As we have now advanced far enough to see. If it have been hitherto impossible to direct the phenomena of magnetism, it is because an initiated and truly emancipated operator has not yet appeared. Who can boast that he is such? Have we not ever new self-conquest to make? Oh, hang on, there was a footnote that says, over and above that animal magnetism, which is purely physical, there is human magnetism, or that of the true moral order. Souls are polarized like bodies, and spiritual or human magnetism is that which we term the power of fascination. The radiation of a great thought or a powerful imagination among men generates an attracting eddy which soon encircles the intellectual sun with planets and the planets with satellites. A great man in the heaven of thought is the focus of a universe. From Le Grand Arcane. Okay, have we not ever new self conquest to make? At the same time, it is certain that nature will obey the sign and word of one who is strong enough to be convinced that she will. I say that nature will obey. I do not say that she will belie herself or disturb the order of her possibilities. The healing of nervous diseases by word, breath, or contact, resurrection in certain cases, resistance of evil wills sufficient to disarm and confound murderers, even the faculty of making oneself invisible by confusing the sight of those whom it is important to elude. All this is a natural effect of projecting or withdrawing the astral light. Thus was Valentius dazzled and terror struck on entering the temple of Caesarea, even as Heliodorus of old, overwhelmed by a sudden madness in the temple of Jerusalem, believed himself scourged and trampled by angels. Thus also the admiral de Coligny imposed respect on his assassins, and could only be dispatched by a madman who fell upon him with averted face. What rendered Joan of Arc invariably victorious was the fascination of her faith and the miracle of her audacity. She paralyzed the arms of those who would have assailed her, and the English may have very well been sincere in regarding her as a witch or a sorceress. As a fact, she was a sorceress unconsciously, herself believing that she acted supernaturally, while she was really disposing of an occult force which is universal and invariably governed by the same laws. The Magus magnetizer should have command of the natural medium, and consequently of that astral body by which our soul communicates with our organs. He must say to the material body, sleep, and to the sidereal body, dream. And there's a note saying, Hallucinations and visions are the result of injuries inflicted on the plastic mediator and of its local paralysis. Sometimes it fails to radiate and, in a manner, substitutes condensed images for the realities revealed by the light. Sometimes the radiation is too strong and condenses outside, about some accidental and ill regulated center, as the blood and bodily excrescences, and then the phantoms of our brain assume a form and seemingly also a soul, and we manifest to our own selves in splendor or deformity, following the ideal of our desires or fears. From Le Clef de Grand Mystery. Thereupon, the aspect of visible things changes, as in hashish visions. Cagliostro is thought to have possessed this power, and he increased its action by means of fumigations and perfumes. But true magnetic ability should transcend these auxiliaries, all more or less inimical to reason and destructive of health. And another note on that sentence says, whether natural or induced, the state of somnambulism is highly dangerous, for in combining the phenomena of waking with those of sleep, it is like a sidetracking brought about between two worlds. The soul jangling in the springs of individual life while bathing in the universal life experiences ineffable beatitude and would willingly let go the nerve cords which hold it suspended above the current. The situation is identical in every species of ecstasy. If the will plunges therein by an impassioned effort or lets itself go completely, idiocy, paralysis, or even death may ensue. From Le Clef de Grand Mystery, and also in there it says, in the phenomena of natural somnambulism, the plastic mediator is overloaded with ill digested nutriment. Though bound by the torpor of sleep, the will in this state impels the plastic mediator instinctively towards the organs to set it free, and there follows a kind of mechanical reaction which equilibrates the light of the mediator by the movement of the body. This is why it is so dangerous to awaken somnambulists with a start, because the congested mediator may withdraw suddenly to the common reservoir and abandon the physical organism altogether, thus causing death. Okay, Monsieur Ragon, in his learned work on occult masonry, gives the recipe for a series of medicaments calculated to include the exaltation of somnambulism. It is by no means a knowledge to be despised, but prudent magus should avoid its practice. The astral light is projected by glance, by voice, and by the thumb and palm of the hand. Music is a potent auxiliary of the voice, and hence comes the word enchantment. No musical instrument is more bewitching than the human voice, but the faraway notes of a violin or harmonica may augment its power. The patient whom it is proposed to subjugate is prepared in this way, and when he is half stupefied, as it were, enveloped by the charm, the hand should be extended towards him. He should be commanded to sleep or to see, and he will obey despite himself. Should he resist, a fixed glance must be directed towards him, one thumb placed between his eyes and the other on his breast. So, touching him lightly with a single and swift contact, the breath must be slowly drawn in again and again breathed gently and warmly forth, repeating in a low voice, sleep or see. Well, okay. And that does it for today, for our 6th chapter of Transcendental Magic. Lots of good info in there about the astral light. So again, perhaps maybe you can see from your studies and practices, unless of course you're not quite that studied or practiced, then that's okay. It can be a little bit of foreshadowing, we could say, to when you do get there. But the correspondence, otherwise, the correspondence between Tiferet on the Tree of Life and what has been said in these chapter 6s of both Ritual and Magic, or whatever, you know what I'm trying to say, Doctrine and Ritual. All right, you guys. Well, okie doke then. Gotta run. Gotta go. I think I gotta go run to the tire shop real quick. So we stay moving. You know how it is. But much love to you all. I will see you guys tomorrow, where we will get in on chapter 7. And then back to Buddhism, baby. That's going to be wonderful. That's going to be a great way to spend the week. And then sometime in the near future, we might make a slight change up to things, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I do like to keep you guys updated. I appreciate you all very much. I figure if you're here, if you're one of the people who's here steadily enough, then you probably are happy to get the whatever kind of updates or communication. And for the rest of people, well, they aren't really hanging around, so why would they care? Fair enough. I probably wouldn't if I was in their shoes too. But anyway, yep. So I'll see you tomorrow for chapter 7 of Éliphas Lévi's Transcendental Magic. It's Doctrine and Ritual. Some information on Netzach. I appreciate you. I love you all, and I wish you a wonderful day. This has been Jay Valdez, and bye-bye.